In a quiet town nestled between hills and farmland, Daniel was known for one thing: he could reach the dogs no one else could. With over 2 decades of experience working with aggressive and traumatized animals, mostly German shepherds, Daniel had built a quiet reputation not just as a trainer but as someone who truly understood broken souls. But Daniel wasn't alone on his missions anymore. For the past few years, his daughter Lily had joined him whenever she could. She was 10, curious, kind-hearted and wise beyond her years. Born just weeks before her mother passed away, Lily had grown up with dogs instead of siblings. Animals were her comfort, her language, her way of understanding the world. That morning, as they packed the last of their gear into Daniel's worn-out backpack, neither of them could have imagined how one chained dog would change them forever. The call came just before noon. Daniel was finishing up a session with a rescue Labrador when his phone buzzed. The voice on the other end belonged to Carla, a caseworker from the local animal rescue unit. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Dan, we've got a situation," she said, her tone tight. "It's a German shepherd named Shadow. He's been chained up in someone's backyard for almost his entire life. The owners moved and left him there. No one's been able to get near him." Daniel's eyes narrowed. Is he aggressive? He's beyond that. He's lost it. Animal control tried, but he nearly tore the gate down. "The neighbors are afraid we need you." Daniel glanced at Lily, who was sitting on a bench nearby, scribbling in her notebook. He nodded slowly. "I'll come, but my truck's still in the shop." "No problem," Carlo replied. "I'll send Dr. Garcia to pick you up." An hour later, the vet's van pulled into Daniel's driveway. Lily jumped in without hesitation. She'd been on dozens of these calls before, but there was always a quiet tension in the air when it involved aggression. As the van moved through dusty county roads, Dr. Garcia briefed them. Shadows, huge, malnourished but powerful chains, rusted into the ground. People have been tossing food over the fence for over a year now. No one's touched him in longer than that. Lily bit her lip. Why would someone leave a dog like that? Daniel didn't answer right away. He stared out the window, thinking of all the dogs he'd seen broken by isolation. Some people don't know what damage a chain can do, he finally said. Others, they just don't care. Lily reached for his hand. Then let's go show him someone does. The house sat at the edge of a dying field, the kind of place that looked abandoned even when it wasn't. The gate creaked as Dr. Garcia pushed it open, and a foul mix of rust urine and old sour food hit their noses instantly. Then came the sound, sharp, guttural barking that rattled through the air like gunfire. Shadow. He was bigger than Daniel expected, a massive German shepherd with a thick, matted coat and wild eyes that darted in every direction. He lunged at the end of the chain, his body surging forward with terrifying force, teeth flashing like daggers. The metal chain groaned under the pressure, digging into the dirt and jerking taut every few seconds as Shadow threw himself at the intruders. Lily instinctively stepped behind her father, her fingers clutching the back of his coat. "He looks like he wants to kill us," she whispered. Daniel didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the dog's movements. Fast, unpredictable, pure instinct and fear wrapped in muscle. Even with years of experience, Daniel felt something in his chest tighten. This wasn't just aggression, this was desperation. The property owner stood far back, arms crossed nervously. "Hasn't let anyone near him in over a year," he said. "I just leave food and go. Last time I tried to pet him, he almost took my hand off. I had to drug his meal just to change the chain." Daniel slowly reached into his bag and pulled out a strip of boiled chicken, his usual first move with aggressive dogs. He tossed it gently in Shadow's direction. The dog didn't even glance at it. His eyes never left. Daniel barking so hard his voice cracked, only when they all stepped back toward the gate. Did the barking pause for a brief second? Shadow darted forward, grabbed the chicken in a flash, then returned to his guard stance, eyes blazing. Lily leaned closer to her father. "He doesn't hate us," she said softly. "He just doesn't believe we're real." Daniel looked at her, surprised, and then he nodded. Daniel crouched just outside the reach of Shadow's chain, eyes, soft voice, calm. He spoke in low tones, not commands, but conversations. the way one might speak to a scared child hiding under a bed, but every word was met with another wave of fury. Shadow's barking didn't falter. It was raw, panicked, like he was trying to push the world away with his voice alone. His body trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper, a frantic energy like he didn't know how to exist without being ready to attack. Daniel changed tactics. He sat down, slowly in the dirt, turned his back slightly to the dog, and let his hands rest on his knees. A show of trust, a signal I'm not here to fight you. The barking lessened. Not much, but enough. The growls returned, low, guttural, but the frantic edge faded just a little. From behind him, Lily watched silent. She knelt near the fence, not moving, not making a sound. Her sketchpad lay forgotten in the grass. "Why is he so scared?" she finally asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. He took a deep breath, watching Shadow's eyes twitch with suspicion at every breath, every blink, because the world taught him to be. He said he wasn't born angry. Something or someone made him believe no one is safe. Shadow suddenly lunged forward again, teeth snapping inches from Daniel's boot. The chain groaned under the strain, his neck pulling hard against the collar. Daniel didn't flinch. "He's not trying to bite," he murmured almost to himself. "He's trying to survive." The dog barked again, more like a warning this time than a threat. But then Daniel noticed it, the slightest twitch of an ear when he spoke gently, the momentary pause in growling when Lily's voice floated softly through the air, tiny signs almost invisible. But to Daniel they meant everything. There was still something alive inside this dog, something that hadn't given up completely. The sun had started its slow descent across the sky, casting long golden shadows through the overgrown grass. Daniel remained seated, unmoving. His legs ached, but he didn't shift. In this kind of work, movement wasn't progress. Stillness was. He knew this game well. It wasn't about dominance or control. It was about proving, with every breath, "I'm not going to hurt you." Lily had sat down, a few feet behind him. She didn't speak, didn't fidget. She just watched. Her quiet presence somehow softened the moment, like a gentle breeze in a tense room. Shadow paced within the tight radius of his chain eyes, flicking between the two humans. He barked less now, but the growling never truly stopped. A low, constant rumble like thunder waiting to break loose. Every few minutes, Daniel would shift just slightly, moving his hand an inch forward in the dirt or scooting half a step closer. Nothing sudden, nothing threatening. At one point he paused for 20 whole minutes without moving at all. Chver took his eyes off him. "He's watching your hands," Lily whispered, "like he's waiting for you to grab something." Daniel nodded without turning. That's what people used to do to him. There was a long silence, broken only by the sound of wind rustling the dry grass. Then something changed. Shadow stopped pacing. His tail was still tucked, but no longer stiff with panic. When Daniel moved his fingers slowly in the dirt, drawing a line, nothing more. Shadow didn't lunge, he didn't growl. He just watched. Daniel noticed but didn't celebrate. These small shifts, micro movements of trust, were fragile. Pushed too hard and the wall would slam shut again. He reached into his bag, pulled out another piece of chicken and placed it just outside the circle of chain length. Shadow didn't approach, not yet, but he didn't back away either. And for Daniel, that meant everything. The sky turned amber, then bruised with the slow fade of daylight. Hours had passed, and Shadow remained a statue of tension and warning. Daniel's knees ached, his throat dry, and his spirit flickered between patience and doubt. He glanced at Lily. She was still sitting there, quiet and steady, hugging her knees to her chest. She hadn't spoken in a while, but her eyes never left Shadow. Then softly, she broke the silence. "Dad," she said, "can I try?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "Try what?" "Helping him." He turned to her, fully now concern in his eyes. "Lily, this isn't like the other dog Shadow is. He's still in survival mode. One wrong move, I won't move wrong," she said gently, her voice steady. "I won't move at all. If he doesn't want me to, I just want to let him know I'm here." Daniel hesitated, but there was something in her face that told him this wasn't childish bravery. It was something deeper, a knowing. He nodded once. "Okay, stay behind the chain's reach. No sudden moves." Lily smiled faintly, then reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small, crinkled bag of animal-shaped cookies. She took one out, just one, and without a word crawled slowly on her hands and knees to a spot closer to the edge of the fence. Shadow's ears perked, his eyes locked on her. She didn't look at him. Instead, she gently placed the cookie on the grass, then backed away slowly, silently, and waited. For a long moment nothing happened. Then, like a ripple breaking still water, Shadow crept forward one step, then another. His body stayed low, tail curled between his legs. But his nose twitched, testing the scent. He took the cookie, didn't growl, didn't retreat. He just stood there, chewing slowly, still watching the girl. Lily sat cross-legged, hands in her lap. "Hi," she whispered. "My name's Lily." Shadow didn't respond, but he didn't bark either. And for the first time that day, his ears tilted forward, not in aggression, but in curiosity. Daniel felt something tighten in his throat. She had reached him. Where all his experience failed, her quiet heart had opened a door. Darkness had begun to settle over the yard, with only the fading glow of sunset lingering at the edge of the sky. The world had grown quiet. No barking, no growling, just the gentle rustle of wind and the slow breathing of a dog who had finally stopped fighting. The air, Shadow sat near the chain post, eyes flicking between Daniel and Lily. He looked tired, not physically, but like something inside him had loosened. Not relaxed, not yet, but no longer at war. Lily leaned toward her father. "He's ready?" Daniel studied the dog carefully, then reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out a special catch pull. Padded, soft, designed not to hurt. It was the kind of tool meant to be invisible if used with grace. "He might run or bite," Daniel said mostly to himself, but Lily shook her head. "He trusts us a little." Daniel moved slowly, deliberately, inching toward the post where the chain was bolted to the ground. Every few steps he stopped. Shadow's eyes tracked him, but his body didn't tense. When Daniel reached the bolt, he knelt and carefully began to unscrew the rusted metal. His hands were steady, breath shallow. Then click, the bolt loosened, the chain gave way and slithered to the dirt with a heavy clang. Shadow jumped, but he didn't run, he didn't lunge. He just stood there, frozen, staring at the space where the chain had been. His body was trembling, his eyes wide. He looked down at his own neck, confused by the absence of weight. Then slowly he took one tentative step forward, then another. Lily smiled through tears. "You're free, Shadow," she whispered. For the first time in years, he believed it. The chain lay coiled in the dirt, like a dead snake. For a long while, Shadow didn't move. He stood there, completely still, as if his body didn't quite believe what had happened. Daniel backed away slowly, giving him space. Lily remained sitting in the same place, hands in her lap, saying nothing. She didn't need to. Her presence had already said everything. Then slowly, cautiously, Shadow lifted one paw and stepped forward. The motion was awkward, unsure, like a prisoner stepping out of a cell after years in the dark. His head swiveled around, ears twitching at every sound, but no longer in panic. There was something else now, awareness, curiosity. Daniel held his breath as Shadow sniffed the air and took another few steps, putting more distance between himself and the post that had defined his world for so long. Lily smiled gently. He's learning how to walk again. It wasn't about his legs, it was his mind. Shadow had spent so long moving in circles that straight lines felt foreign. Freedom felt suspicious, but with each step, his spine straightened, his shoulders loosened. Dr. Garcia opened the back of the van, setting down a soft blanket and bowl of water. "Let's see if he'll come with us," she murmured. Daniel gave Lily a nod. "Want to try?" Lily stood up and took a few careful steps toward the van, stopping midway. She crouched down, extended her hand, not to touch, just to offer. Shadow stared at her for several long seconds. Then, without any command, he walked slowly, deliberately toward the girl. He didn't flinch, he didn't growl. He came close enough to sniff her palm. Then he did something that made Daniel's eyes sting with disbelief. He leaned in, his forehead, gently, touched Lily's fingers, just for a moment. She didn't move, she didn't speak, but the look in her eyes said it all. Together they walked to the van. Shadow climbed in on his own. Inside he curled up, not in a tight ball of fear, but loosely, like he finally understood this wasn't another trap. That night, Daniel didn't take him to the shelter. He drove home, parked quietly in the driveway, and let Shadow sleep near the fireplace, unchained, untouched, just safe. It wasn't the end of a rescue, it was the beginning of something neither of them had expected. Hope, weeks passed. Shadow, now simply Hope as Lily had lovingly renamed him, became almost unrecognizable. The once feral chained creature was now a calm, attentive companion who followed Lily around like a shadow of a different kind, quiet, gentle, present. Daniel often found himself watching them in the yard. Lily reading on the porch while Hope rested beside her, his head tucked against her feet. There were still moments of hesitation in him, small flinches when someone raised a hand, too quickly, or sudden noises, but they faded faster now. He was learning to trust the world again. Daniel shared the story at every workshop and training seminar he led. Chains, he would say, are not always made of metal. Sometimes they're made of fear, of pain, of memories, too loud to forget. He showed before and after photos of Hope, the snarling, lunging dog barely restrained by rusted steel, and the calm shepherd curled at Lily's side, eyes closed, breathing soft. Many in the audience didn't believe it was the same animal. No fancy methods, no sedatives, no forced submission, just time, and a little girl who refused to give up. He paused often when telling that part, not out of drama but reverence. Billy had taught him something no textbook could. Sometimes healing doesn't start with training, it starts with stillness, presence, love that expects nothing in return. Every time Daniel sees a dog chained in a yard, now he remembers Hope's eyes, and every time he knows, no matter how broken something seems, there's always something worth saving, especially when love decides not to give.